Rachel, all the way to Berlin. It
nice.
is so nice meeting you. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you all for
Take
having
a
me.
seat.
Jenny, I'm recovering. I'm going to cry. That was so sweet. We have to chat later.
I'm fighting back tears as well. It's always so nice to hear positive feedback on your work and on your function as a person in a certain industry, especially in a very male-dominated industry like ours, obviously.
Indeed.
And I mean, Rachel, I could start reading out all your achievements and all the awesome things you've done the past decade, well, over a past decade. So it's 11 years you've been hosting already?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah,
from YouTube videos to esports stages to whatever we're doing now these days.
So if I would like read it all out, it will probably take up all the time we have for this fireside chat. So that's
a very nice way to say that I'm old. Thank you.
Oh wow, no, I think you're even younger than me. So
well, you look fantastic.
I mean, we don't get old, we get better.
Indeed.
So, yes, Rachel, as said, thank you so much for coming here. And for the few people around here that don't know who you are, could you please sum up what you do?
Sure. My name is Rachel Quirico, but you see I got Seltzer in the middle. That's my gamer tag. So I know as you meet people throughout the gaming industry, if you're not familiar with the custom, we choose our own name, and that's what we create our new selves under. So about 12, 13 years ago, well, actually longer than that. About 14 years ago, I met my partner in high school, and we met talking about video games. And the two of us have sort of scaffolded each other in this industry over the years. We were both competitive players in PC gaming. Now we have evolved our careers. He works at Blizzard. I do hosting. So if you're not familiar with what my role is, if you've seen singing shows or entertainment shows, there's always the person at the beginning that says, "Welcome, everybody. It's this, and the sponsors are this." Pretty much what Melly did here today. That's what I do at esports stages and events around the world. And I interview the players, I get to know them, and I try and tell the stories of esports in a way that is digestible for mainstream media.
Yeah, that's awesome if you ask me, so that deserves a round of applause. And yes, Rachel, it's awesome that you sit here because I finally get to ask you all the questions I'm usually bothered with. So, Rachel, tell me, how did you, as a girl, get into esports?
As a girl, well, it was my mother. That's the short story. My mom brought games into the house when I was super young. She was taking computer lessons, and she would buy floppy disks and bring them home, and she would play for me, and I would scream at her. And we together invented modern video game streaming. Mm-hmm. But video games are always part of my life. I was very lucky to have a household that had money enough to bring consoles home. I would get them for Christmas, my brother and we would play video games with the neighborhood kids. And then when I got to high school, I went from a very small, private Catholic school to a very big high school, and I was like, well, I need to make some friends. And so my first class of my first day at school, I met some very outrageous characters, and I said to them, well, you guys play video games, right? And they're like, what? Yes, we do. So we started playing video games together. Those are some friendships that have lasted me my whole life. I told you how I met my partner in high school playing video games, and it was something I could never deny. I was also a big anime fan, and there was a lot of crossover early on, so that small little nerd pocket really grew these days, huh?
That's so awesome. So, Rachel, you were a professional player as well, a competitive player.
Oh, that's a very generous term for it. I was a competitive player.
Back in the day, I mean, at some point, you probably were contracted by an organization to play video games?
I joined a clan called PMS Clan. So PMS actually predates my experience in the industry, and I was writing, in college, I was writing essays about PMS Clan. It was an all-girl gaming clan. It was founded by two twin sisters, Amy and Amber, and they were all badasses. And I went to an event, and I said, can I interview you? And they said, girl, just join the clan and play with us. So that was the start of my kind of competitive online career.
What did your friends and family say?
They were
to not cross off all the cliche questions.
They were weirded out.
Yeah.
My boyfriend and I would set up our computers in the kitchen, and we'd play competitive Team Fortress 2 back in the day, which was a 6v6, kind of like Overwatch is today. And there was a lot of yelling involved, a lot of call-outs, a lot of emotion, so they didn't know what we were doing. But they're quite happy that it all panned out.
Yeah. So after your time as a competitive player, how did you switch over to the role as a host?
I I really thought, and I was constantly searching for the game that I could be a professional player at. And so there were a lot of different games, fighting games and strategy games that I tried, and I tried so hard to learn and so hard to perfect. And I did pretty well. And then in 2010, I got reached out to be on WCG Ultimate Gamer, which was this reality TV show way back in the day. And I went on this show with players like Justin Wong, who is a very famous Street Fighter player, and Catherine Gunn, who is a very famous FPS player. And watching how they played games, I thought, wow, I am never going to be a pro player. I suck. But I loved what was going on. I loved telling the story of pro players. And the Ultimate Gamer TV show was really hitting an audience in a way that wasn't aware of gaming the way that we've experienced it. And so I thought, wow, there's so many people that I want to tell about this amazing industry. And so that sort of became my role. After Ultimate Gamer, I said, OK, I'm not going to play, but I'm sticking around, and I'm going to find a job for myself. And so I told the story of players instead.
Awesome. How were you received by the community?
The community was more welcoming than I expected, but also less welcoming in certain ways. And so I very much, I started creating content for StarCraft 2. And if you guys remember the StarCraft 2 scene, it was very small, it was very passionate, and they were a little bit suspicious about why people were suddenly coming into this space. It was one of the first esports to be broadcast on online streaming networks, a lot of new eyeballs, a lot of new interest, and the people who had been working at it for years and years and years were like, who are these new faces? And I was one of those new faces. So one of the things I learned in my early days of StarCraft 2 coverage, I would go to events, I would bring a camera and a microphone, and I would interview players. And I would put that content online, and I thought, wow, I'm doing such a good service. I'm helping them tell their stories. I'm providing for the community. But people were like, you're showing yourself too much. You're talking about yourself too much. And you know, it was a lot of important feedback to get. Some of it valid, some of it tinged with other things. But I learned a lot from my days creating content, and that's when I learned, you know, how to tell other people's stories, how to perfect my message, and you know, what the esports communities wanted.
Was there a time you wanted to quit?
Never, not once.
Awesome. So you gained experience with a lot of clients in the past few years, let's say few years. And what have you learned?
I've learned, well, I think what you're referencing is I've worked for games like StarCraft, but also League of Legends, Street Fighter. If a game has had a competitive scene, I've almost certainly touched it in some way. Sorry, appropriately and consensually. And what I've learned is every scene has a different community that's drawn to it. You know, a lot of people want to make that esports TV show that's going to talk about every game and it's going to come out every week and have well, no, because the Street Fighter fans only care about Street Fighter. The StarCraft fans only care about StarCraft, and they have a certain way, each of them, that they want stories to be told, that they want players to be interacted with. And so every time I approach a new game, a new title, a new community, I really take time to learn their rules, to learn that game's culture, and then I try and enter as respectfully as I can, and you know, try and uphold the best of each thing.
What would you tell someone that comes up to you and says, Rachel, I want to do what you do?
I would say you can start tomorrow. You know, there's a million ways to end up, I think, the way we've ended up on this stage. You know, you're a professional player. I was a competitive player, not a professional, but we kind of find different ways to stay in the space. And so I would say if you want to be here, trying to do what I do is a great start. You know, grab a camera, grab a microphone, go to events, but realize that you might end up with the audio team, you might end up being one of the pro players. You know, have an open mind when you come into this space.
Okay, so I mean, we're seeing a very young industry grow up. And what has changed over the past years? How would you rate the development of esports?
I think the biggest change over the last couple of years has been live streaming. When I started playing video games, we would take your tube TV, take your console to a hotel ballroom, and everyone sets it up. And you're there, you set up the chairs, you play the games, and then you close it all down and sweep the floors at the end of the night. And now, when you go and play, you're playing for an audience. You're playing for people all around the world, not just people in that room. And so that's kind of where our job has come in, where something's going on, and now you need somebody to tell that story to the greater viewership.
It is always it is always a challenge for an industry to kind of grow up. You get thrown into a system, you develop your own structures, and suddenly you have to change and to change all these structures. Is that something that affected your work as well?
The changing of the structures has been something that I think I've been able to stay relevant by embracing. So before we had live streaming, a lot of my content was video-on-demand content that I would record and edit and upload to YouTube. But over the years and with the dawn of streaming, now my content is real-time, focused on interviewing, processing in the moment, delivering out to the audience. And so it's been a challenge for me, but one that I've really loved, stepping up to.
So you were one of the first females to be on stage and hold a microphone. And has it changed? Like back in the day, I mean, I always say like that I was a professional Counter-Strike player. Back in the day, I was contracted by an organization. But to be honest, there weren't that many girls playing games. So you could make it to the top way faster than probably today because the scene has grown. And have you noticed a change in diversity when it comes to talent?
I've noticed it's sort of been from the outside in, and that's one of the great effects that going mainstream, I'll call it, has had on the esports industry. You now have someone looking at the esports industry and saying, okay, this is really great if I want to market to, guys age 18 to 35, but I want my investment dollars to hit a bigger market. So why aren't we bringing more women? Why aren't there more people of color? Why isn't this a wider age demographic? And in asking those questions, it's forced the esports scene to evolve a little bit. So over the years, I've certainly seen, more variety in faces, and it's wonderful because every person that joins esports, whatever their background, kind of contributes a different angle to it. And so much of what we do is storytelling that all those different perspectives have made a better and better product year over year.
All right, so when did you visit your first esport event?
My first esports event, I mean, does Pokemon League count?
Let's ask the audience, does it count?
That counts,
yes.
right?
People say yes.
Yeah, they would have
obviously, of course.
Sundays
People were playing
at the game
competitively.
store.
Okay, what year was it?
Gosh, Pokemon, that was 2007 in the US it came out. And they would have, every weekend card games and video games at the store.
So from 2007, well, my first esport event was back in 2002. It was a Counter-Strike tournament.
Oh, you're right. Wait, I said 2007. I meant 1997 for Pokemon.
There you go.
That's when
I was about to say Pokemon came out way earlier. So, but I mean, over the past 2 decades, esports has grown, especially exponentially, looking on the past, let's say, 5 to 7 years. So what are we expecting for the future? What do you think?
Well, I think we've seen a growth in esports because one of the events I cover is E3. E3 is where a lot of game developers go and they say, we're going to announce our new games there. And so about 2-3 years ago, every game was like, and we're going to be an esport. And so you saw esports for, I've hosted a Words with Friends tournament. I've hosted a Puzzle and Dragons event. Every game tries on esports once in a while, and only some games really find that it fits. So I think games that come out, games that really strike a popular fancy, definitely going to try and do esports. But the ones that stick around are totally going to be decided by the audience.
That's so interesting. So maybe let's open up the discussion for our audience as well. So guys, if you have questions, please raise your hands. We do have a microphone here, so you can just fire straight away, even if it's not for the topic we're currently discussing. Don't hesitate. It's just us. We're here basically in our living room, and you can get involved. So do we have questions? There's one.
And if you don't get a chance or you feel like you'd rather ask over text, you can write to me on Twitter at Seltzer, please, at any time.
I was about to say, maybe I'll get my phone and you can tweet it using the hashtag Womenize, or directly at Rachel or me. But yes.
We have a lot of hosts and MC and analysts in esports, but why do we just have a few women in playing as a pro gamer on stage?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great question.
Why are there no female competitive players in mixed tournaments?
There's certainly more than there were. We have Gaguri playing in the Overwatch League. We have, I want to say, in the FGC, in the fighting game community, there are many, many competitive female players. I think why we don't see them at large is it's a population issue at the moment. So the percent of professional gamers is a very small percentage of all gamers. Also, the percentage of all gamers, women are growing year over year in that demographic, but to be, 18 to 30 right now, to be playing at the top of your game, you've had to have started probably 15, 20 years ago, and that's when the female population was much, much smaller than the male population in the competitive gaming scene. Now that I think we've seen it open up to a global audience, we've had a lot more women at a younger age being able to say, I want to start developing the skills now. And so as those girls grow up, the demographics, I think, are going to have to change because guy, girl, however you choose to identify, it does not affect your ability to press buttons at a computer. So it's obviously other factors. We still suffer from negativity in the space. That does affect things. But I will say it's getting better year over year, having seen from the beginning.
Exactly. Looking on the numbers, I mean, the competitive on the competitive players in general, we have 5.7% women playing in competitive games. So that's still very few. And as you already said, until one of them makes it to the very, very tiny top, that is very narrow and just like the crop of the cream. It's really a long journey, and the more women get into esports, the more women we will see on big stages.
But they're getting there. We had Cuddlecore even playing on TBS in the Street Fighter League. We have a lot of top Smash Brothers players, so they're coming up.
Yes, I mean, back in 2008, we had a female Counter-Strike professional playing on the big stages with the boys.
Yes.
Cruncher, Team Speedlink. I don't know if someone remembers her. But yes, so we're getting there, slowly but surely. And thank you so much for the question. I hope that answers your question. So do we have another question from our audience? Don't be shy. No, then I'll just continue.
I'm very scary, Melly.
You're one of the scariest and imitating persons that I've ever seen. Intimidating, that's the word I was looking for, sorry. I struggle with words at times. But yes, so next question. You mentioned it already. Our scene can be not nice, let's put it that way. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with sexism and hostility?
Very early on, I told you I joined PMS Clan, an all-girl gaming clan, and when things would arise, when I first took that step into competitive gaming, I had them at my back. And so when shitty things would happen to me, I'd be like, what is this? And they would say, don't worry about it, it happens, just keep playing. And since the very beginning, I've had an amazing camaraderie with the other women in this space. I think, as I've met them over the years, there's not been a single gal who's been a member in esports that I haven't been able to have a heart-to-heart with. It's what has kept me from falling to shitty attitudes has been the friendship and the allyship of other women, and also of the wonderful men in this space who see what's going on and say, don't listen to it, don't put up with it, we can be better than this. So, find female friends.
And that, of course, translates to other industries as well.
Yeah. Part of what I do for esports is I work as a member of an agency, and in that agency we have some of the most visible women in the space. We have Sue Lee, who does StarCraft events. We have Anna Prosser, who does StarCraft, Dungeons & Dragons, everything, Kelly Link. So many women have sort of snowballed together, and really we set a trend in this industry that we're not going to be crappy to each other, and we're not going to let anybody be crappy to us.
Yeah, that's something we should definitely live by the word. And yes, do we have questions? I'll just keep on asking until someone asks. I have like tons of questions. I could go on for hours, but
hi Rachel. It's so nice that you're here. I was wondering, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome during your career, and how did you overcome them?
Thank you. I think some of the biggest obstacles, and I would say the biggest obstacle I had to overcome was the self-doubt of not being chosen. And this is not unique to our industry. This is something that anyone who is a contractor, anyone who has to put themselves out there and get hired, experiences. The moment where you're like, why not me? Why didn't I get chosen for this event? And that's where I have to reflect back to that camaraderie with my peers in the industry. I felt like really early on when I was first getting to know this space, I would get very upset when I didn't understand why I wasn't chosen, why my work wasn't good enough, why something didn't go over well. And it's very easy to go and say, well, she took it from me. Well, she's up there and I'm not, so it's her fault. And no, it could never be her fault. It's the people who hired her who didn't communicate with me, who didn't give me feedback. Once I understood a little bit more about how the scene worked, I realized that I had no better ally than the people who were being chosen over me, or people who I was being chosen over. And that's kind of where our idea of unionization began, our getting together, our melding of the minds, is that our system and our esports ecology was young. It wasn't established. And so if we wanted it to work a certain way, we had to talk to each other and make sure that that's how it played out. And so, yeah, it's hard to deal with not being chosen, but there are some really obvious answers in getting to know your space, and also self-reflection. I had to work on myself. I had to work on my presentation and my methods, and it all helped me improve.
All right, so I feel like that this is an issue besides minorities in a space that want to stand out. They start fighting each other. Why? Why is that?
It's by design, right? Anyone who wants something is now at the mercy of the person who has it. And that person who has it may not want to pay very much, may want to get a lot of free work out of people who are desperate for that position. And so it took a lot of reform at the top, the people that were hiring us. We had to ask for communication. We had to I have a manager now. I've had a manager, he's my manager for 10 years. I wouldn't change anything. He is the one now that goes and demands answers and says, you weren't chosen because they didn't want to fly you and this person was local. And that's the answer. I don't have to agonize and beat myself up for 2 days. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so there is a question over there. Yeah, far back in the Strandkorb. How is it called in English? How do you call that in English? I have never needed a word in my life in a different language than German.
We're going to have to come up with one. There's no English word for that.
Maybe, I mean, the direct translation would be beach basket.
Oh, yeah, the beach basket.
The beach basket. Okay, fire away.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for this talk for a moment. It's very interesting. I have a question. Personally, I'm playing Overwatch. Not professional, more casual, but as a player, you always also get this these reports about the toxic behavior regarding Geguri, the only female player in the Overwatch League, or some weird arguments like, okay, a woman in a team would distract the male players, or something. But this is just the top of everything we actually get to know, because people read the stuff which sounds weird. Could you please tell us how the actual atmosphere is, what support there is below the top 10%? Because I know there are also LGBT teams or great support for streamers and players in the top 500. So what is the actual picture that we don't see, maybe?
You're talking about maybe some less visible members of the Overwatch community who are still out there, who are still doing great stuff?
Yeah, but more like what the feedback is, how the players interact and so on, because I don't think the community is actually that toxic, but we don't see it. So I would like to see what you as a professional experienced in that way.
I can speak to that a little bit. I haven't actually, I do want to preface this with saying I haven't interviewed Geguri or her team, and so I don't want to speak for anyone on that team. But as an observer, as someone who has seen the team work together, and as someone who has played on co-ed teams, in any situation, someone can come up with potential bad things or potential good things, as you said. The execution is actually much less dire. She is one of 6 people on a team. That team did not do very well last year, but that had very little to do with anyone's gender and had very much to do with, I'll say, goats. Any group of people is a group of those individuals, and how they act can't really be predicted. I think that her team works wonderful together. I think that she's very well respected, and I think that other players in the league respect her contributions.
I think that the question was also aimed towards the general behavior of a scene. Like we witness a lot of toxicity when we join like solo queue games or play with random people on the internet. I know a lot of Russian these days by playing Counter-Strike matchmaking. So
all the best words, I'm
yeah,
sure.
all the best words, exactly. So I think the question is how it is in the top 5%. How do people and players interact with each other within the professional realms of computer games? Is that correct?
Yeah, just the part we don't see, because
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't see like the pro players interact with each other on the servers, obviously, because we're just an observer, we're just observing the game. How's the general tone of behavior within the pro scene?
Gosh, well, let's see. I can speak to a lot of pro scenes, but I don't cover the Overwatch one very well. I will say that, you know, a team is aggressive towards other teams. You know, there's a lot of competition at stake. The teams that play together, and yes, they trash talk a little. I'm sure every team has their own gripes with every other team.
Of course.
And I'm sure there's some locker room talk that takes place. But I'm going to tell you right now, guys, I'm a gold player, so I have no idea what they're talking about in Grandmasters.
But yes, I mean, maybe I can help out with that question a bit. I spent 5 weeks in Katowice, one of the biggest esports festivals in the world, and of course you have those grudge matches going on, the rivalry between teams. But when the match is done, they go outside and have a smoke together, or go to a bar and have a drink, or go together and get dinner. It's probably the same with traditional athletes. Of course, there are situations and maybe things that shouldn't be said online that are said online, even in that area of play. But you can, of course, notice how professional everything is becoming. And I hope that covers your question.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, well said. She's the professional player, so Melly can definitely answer that better than me.
Yeah. No, but still, it is really interesting. It is a really interesting thing to talk about, because I mean, we had the reaction right here when I didn't get your name. Sorry, when the last person asked the question said that female players are confronted with, distracting their male mixed team members. People laughed, but that's something that is that's a popular opinion, isn't it? Like, I've heard that plenty of times.
Yeah, it's an opinion that's been used to justify a lot of bullshit over the millennia.
Yeah.
No, if you have a distraction problem, it's not the woman's fault. And I would say that she's not. No, there's no distraction there.
No.
I'm not wearing a burqa to my tournament. I don't know unless I choose to. But like.
But no, so the industry has to do a lot more work when it comes to implementing new structures, especially when it comes to integrating females. And I'm not speaking about putting females on a pedestal, because that's not what we want.
Yeah.
But we want fair chances for everyone.
I would say that's the very interesting part of Gaguri's story, is that when Gaguri came out and she was an exceptional player, a lot of people second-guessed her and said, no, she can't possibly be this good. And then a lot of other people said, oh, she's the savior of women in gaming. And she said, I don't want to be any of these things. I just want to play. Yeah. And I thought, gosh, if there's one thing that I, as a woman in this space, have been working for over the years, it's that if you want to come in here, you don't have to be anything other than the player that you want to be. You don't have to be a model. You don't have to be a spokesperson. You don't have to be a figurehead. Because all the men that play in this space don't feel that responsibility when they play. And so actually, to answer a little bit of an earlier question, I think what stops a lot of women from moving up into the ultimate competitive tier of the scene is that they can't just be players like the boys are. They have to be role models. They have to do the extra interviews. They have to wear the makeup. And that's a lot of extra ask.
That's very true, very true. Do we have any further questions? There's one, two. All right. First Jenny, then the lovely girl behind Jenny.
Yeah, you too. You told us a lot about traveling and being on tournaments and everything, and I was always wondering. So my job, I have to travel a lot, but only in Berlin and here in the scene. So I'm not there every evening, and when my parents ask me to come over, it's not easy to find a day, even they are living here. So I'm just wondering about what or how you do handle those things, because you're so. I know Melly very well, and I'm always asking her, hey, how are you, what you're doing? And she told me, I'm in Katowice, I'm here and there and everywhere, but she's never here. So yeah, Rachel, for you too. The US is a really big country. So yeah, how do you handle it, the private life? I think that's one hard thing, or I can imagine it can be a hard thing. Yeah.
Travel and private life.
Yeah.
Travel, it's fun. You know, I mentioned before, my partner and I have been together since high school, 14 years, and we both work in the industry. So it's essential that I have an understanding partner who, when I say, hey, I got a call, I got to be in China in 2 days, and I'm going to be there for, 2 weeks, is that okay? He's like, yeah, go, make that money. So, it's nice to have someone that understands what I'm going to do and where I'm going. And, we've made a lot of choices in our life together. We don't have kids. We, focus a lot of time, of free time, on playing video games. Our favorite pastime when he gets home from work is to play some Overwatch or some RTS games. And right now, it's my greatest joy. It's a pleasure every time I get a call to go somewhere. It's a pleasure every time I get word that I get to stay home from work and just be in my apartment with my cats. It's a freedom that I get, and I appreciate it. It's probably very fixed in this time in my life. I am putting other choices on hold, of course, for it, and I'm aware of that. But I would say I'm just so happy in every moment that
there is nothing wrong with that.
I'm here in Berlin talking to you guys.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
nothing sad about this. This is a blessing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny, for the question. And our next question from the audience. Just start speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the very inspiring and insightful talk. I have a question. Could you summarize like 3 main pain points from a business perspective that freaks you out in this esport world and that you would like to improve?
Sure. 3 main pain points. Ooh.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm going to try and be succinct for you.
That's a challenge.
One is being a contractor. So I will say that my job is entirely reliant on getting a phone call and being asked to go do something. And sometimes it can be a month or 2 between those events. So certainly managing finances is tough. In the US, you have to pay insurance if you want to get health care, which is its own conversation. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have a partner that provides that for me, because that's a very big expense. And it's not easy for a lot of people to kind of take on the role that I have. So I would say the biggest pain point is how difficult it is to be an independent contractor and to rely on companies. There's definitely an issue with sort of the lack of oversight in the scene, how things can sort of pop up and make big promises, and a lot of children might drop out of school and join your competitive team, and then your league collapses, and then they are outside of school and have made a choice that is not paying off for them now. The instability of the scene is a little difficult right now, because there's not a great safety net for players who want to attempt to go high in esports and don't have a fallback plan. And let's see, a third pain point. I would say that we're still trying to get a hang of moderation on live content, and that's going to be an issue for personalities like me who have to read awful things in chat, but it's also an issue for companies who want to spend money and then have to look at their brand's logo alongside awful things in chat. So I think moderation is definitely something that is going to be improved upon over the years to sort of help everybody feel a little better and make a little more money.
All right.
I hope that answered.
That was a thumbs
Sweet.
up. Thank you. So we do have time for a couple more questions, and as said, I could ask millions more, but we're here for you, so we want to hear your questions.
Do you think that the esports scene does need more campaigns to address young girls for them to consider to work in esports and gaming, or do you both think that we just wait and see what's happening? Like, do we need more active campaigns to inspire them?
Do we need more active campaigns? I would say yes. I would say that there's a lot of ways, big spend and small spend, that this can be accomplished. I always thought that it would be a great idea to, if you're running an online tournament and you bought some ad space to advertise it on GotFrag or on SRK, you might also want to spend some money to advertise it on Marie Claire or 17magazine.com. Because I think that there's an idea that gaming is a male-dominated space, and you have to be a certain kind of tomboy or a certain kind of tough girl to get involved. But that's really not the case. And so I think if one saw gaming in more feminized spaces, that association might start to break down. And maybe, we would reach some communities that we don't traditionally reach just by marketing on gaming and tech sites. So yes, absolutely.
And it also translates to other industries as well. Just as other industries are trying to get more young girls involved into their industry, it should be the same with esports. I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah.
So, question, last one. Then we have to. We're a bit shy. It's early in the morning, this is not our time.
My favorite Pokemon's Articuno. What else do you want?
Okay, hi. I remember you from the early StarCraft 2 days when you were hosting events. And I've seen you a couple of months ago on some events that were broadcasted on Twitch. And in between, I didn't follow the esports scene that much. And what I realized is that you became way, way better. Compared to...
I would hope so.
So my question basically is, how did you identify points that were where you were improving as a host? Were there certain events where you said, oh shit, they didn't hire me and that's why? Or did you take a different approach to that?
Well, let's see. The internet has been exceptionally helpful in pointing out my varied flaws. So, but that is its own mess in that you need to watch it close enough where you can kind of learn from the feedback that's being provided at places like Reddit and YouTube comments and Twitch chat. But also you need to have a double checker where you can't just take all of that trash in unfiltered. So fortunately, I've had some great friends. Like I said, I've had a manager over the last 10 years who I've been able to say, like, hey, did this go over really badly? And he can say, well, you shouldn't have said this. Maybe this next time. Also, my friends and my peers. Some of my best friends are other hosts in the industry, people that are working in the same space. And so we do make a concerted effort to give each other feedback, to really ask each other for ways to improve. And most recently, we've started doing workshops. So my company, CSA, has hired a Nickelodeon director to come and work with some of us in some workshops, and Twitch as well has hired me and some of our talent to go and give workshops to up-and-coming talent, which taught me a lot. So I would say that our scene now has identified what we do as hosts and interviewers and presenters, and has realized that this is an area that they really need to work on the polish for. So we're getting some professional help, as well as being self-reflective.
Yeah, that's a blessing and the very downside of the internet, that everyone can take part and that everyone takes part, And I mean, criticism is something very good if it's constructive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to be able to understand. Well, in our cases, like, our communities are very, very hard to handle, and sometimes you just have to read the comments with a very good will deep down in your heart.
Well, I'll tell you a brief story about it.
Go ahead, please.
I covered StarCraft, and I would interview a lot of Korean-speaking players, and I don't speak very much Korean. So we would sit in a situation like this, and there would be a translator on the other side, and I would ask them a question. And they, as they're answering, I would encourage them. I'd nod along and laugh if they laughed a little bit and stuff like that. And I did an interview like that, and I went and read the comments. And the comments say, look at this idiot laughing like she understands. And I was like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that. So I went out and I did my very next interview with another Korean player. Exactly like that. And then I went and I read the comments, and I'm like, look at this totally unengaged interviewer, not caring at all. And I realized, okay, well, not every opinion is useful to me. This is a situation maybe where I'm going to figure out my own way. And that was like a watershed moment for me. So I can't make everybody happy.
It's just funny. Like everyone, as said, everyone can take place. And I had a similar situation with a low-cut top and a high-close top. It was a 2-day event, okay? And I was wearing something like that. So, I mean, there is nothing wrong with that. We look good in what we're wearing, period. So, and the chat was going all nuts, like, oh my God, she's only there because of her boobs. And oh my God, look at that low-cut top. So I was like, okay, so I'll wear the higher-cut top the next day. And I wore a higher-cut top. Oh, she's trying to hide everything. Look at her. She's trying to hide a high-cut top. So you can't make it right. You can't make it right.
You can't win. So do you. That's all.
And I think that is a beautiful closing statement. Rachel, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And thank you for coming all the way to Berlin. And this is your applause.